The grandfather clock struck 6 in the morning as Rosa Martinez stepped through the servants' entrance of Ashford Manor. Her worn shoes clicked softly against the marble floor, creating echoes in the vast hallway. The mansion stood like a fortress. On the hillside, with 30 rooms that gleamed with wealth but felt empty of warmth. Rosa clutched her work bag tighter, reminding herself that this job would help her send money home to her sick mother in the village. Lucia, the head housekeeper, met her at the door with a stern expression. The older woman had worked at the manor for 15 years and knew every rule by heart. She handed Rosa a crisp uniform and a list of instructions that covered 3 pages. Rosa noticed that Lucia's hands trembled slightly as she spoke about the master of the house. "Listen carefully, child," Lucia whispered, glancing over her shoulder. "Mr. Vincent Ashford expects perfection. He walks through these halls at 7 sharp every morning. Not a single item can be out of place. Not one speck of dust can remain. Those who displease him do not last long here." Rosa nodded, absorbing every word. She had heard stories about Vincent Ashford in the village. People spoke of him with a mixture of respect and fear. He had built his empire from nothing, turning abandoned properties into luxury estates. His business tactics were ruthless. His personal life remained a mystery. No one dared to question his authority. The untouchable. King Vincent Ashford descended the grand staircase at precisely 7 o'clock. His tailored suit fit him perfectly, and his dark hair was styled without a strand out of place. Everything about him screamed control and power. The household staff lined up in the hallway, their heads bowed in respect. Rosa stood at the end of the line, studying the man who commanded such absolute obedience. His cold gray eyes scanned each person, checking for any flaw or mistake. When a young butler's shirt collar was slightly crooked, Vincent stopped. Silence that followed felt suffocating. The butler's face turned pale as Vincent stared at him without saying a word. Finally, Vincent moved on. But the message was clear. Perfection was not optional. Rosa watched this display of dominance with growing unease. She had worked in wealthy homes before, but never had she seen someone rule their household like a dictator. The staff moved like shadows, afraid to make noise or draw attention. Even Vincent's elderly mother, Margaret, seemed to tread carefully around her own son. Margaret Ashford sat in the breakfast room reading the morning paper. Despite her age, her eyes were sharp and observant. She noticed Rosa immediately and smiled warmly, a stark contrast to her son's coldness. When Vincent entered, Margaret set down her paper and greeted him with careful politeness. "Good morning, Vincent."
Hi, dear.
"I hope you slept well, Mother." Vincent's response was brief and emotionless. He sat at the head of the table, and servants rushed to pour his coffee and serve his breakfast. Every movement was choreographed like a ballet. No one spoke unless spoken to. No one made unnecessary sounds. The first defiance Rosa's first week passed in a blur of endless cleaning and strict routines. She learned to move silently through the mansion, to anticipate Vincent's needs before he voiced them, to become invisible yet efficient. The other staff members treated her kindly but warned her constantly about the consequences of mistakes. On Friday evening, Vincent hosted a dinner party for business associates. The dining room sparkled with crystal and silver. Rosa was assigned to help serve the guests alongside 3 other maids. Trevor Walsh, Vincent's business partner, arrived with a loud laugh and expensive cologne. He treated the staff like furniture, snapping his fingers when he wanted service. The evening progressed smoothly until Vincent noticed that the wine served to his guests was not the vintage he had specified. His jaw tightened and his eyes found Lucia across the room. The head housekeeper's face went white. She had ordered the wine herself, trusting the supplier's recommendation when the preferred vintage was unavailable. Lucia, Vincent's voice cut through the dinner conversation like ice. "Join me in the study." Now, the room fell silent. The guests exchanged uncomfortable glances. Lucia followed Vincent out with her head down, knowing that her years of loyal service might end tonight. Rosa felt her heart pound. She knew that Lucia had made an honest mistake. trying to provide the best alternative when faced with an impossible situation. The moment everything changed, Rosa finished clearing the dessert plates and excused herself. From the dining room, she walked quickly toward the study, her mind racing. Through the heavy oak door, she could hear Vincent's cold voice berating Lucia. The older woman was crying, apologizing repeatedly, but Vincent showed no mercy. Incompetence is unacceptable. You've embarrassed me in front of important clients. Pack your things. You are dismissed. Rosa's hand touched the door handle. Every instinct told her to walk away, to stay silent, to protect herself. But she thought of Lucia's kindness during her first difficult days. She thought of her own mother, who had taught her that silence in the face of injustice was its own form of betrayal. She knocked firmly and entered without waiting for permission. Vincent turned, his expression dark with anger. "Who gave you permission to interrupt?" "Mr. Ashford." Rosa's voice was steady, despite her racing heart. "I cannot let you fire Lucia for this mistake." The room froze. Lucia gasped. Vincent stared at Rosa as if she had spoken in a foreign language. No one contradicted Vincent Ashford. No one questioned his decisions. The concept of defiance was so foreign in this house that for a moment he seemed unable to process what had just happened. "Excuse me?" Vincent's voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. "The wine shortage was not her fault," Rosa continued, meeting his eyes directly. The supplier failed to deliver what was promised. Lucia did her best to find an alternative. She has served your family faithfully for 15 years. Firing her for one honest mistake is not justice. It is cruelty. The aftermath, the silence that followed, stretched like a rubber band about to snap. Vincent took a step toward Rosa, his presence overwhelming. She stood her ground, though her hands trembled at her sides. Lucia sobbed quietly, terrified of what happened next. "You dare to tell me what is just in my own home?" Vincent's voice carried a mixture of disbelief and rage. "I dare to speak the truth," Rosa replied quietly. "Everyone in this house fears you so much that they have forgotten how to be honest with you. Perhaps that is why you make decisions that hurt loyal people who have done nothing to deserve such treatment." Vincent's eyes blazed, but something flickered behind the anger, confusion, perhaps even curiosity. No one had ever spoken to him this way. He opened his mouth to deliver what surely would be a crushing response, but Margaret's voice interrupted from the doorway. "She is right, Vincent." "Mother and son locked eyes." Margaret stepped into the study, her expression sad but determined. "This young woman has more courage than anyone in this household. Perhaps it is time you listened to truth instead of only obedience." Vincent looked between his mother, the crying Lucia, and Rosa, who still stood defiant despite the obvious risk. To her own position, the rational part of his mind told him to fire them all, to reassert his absolute authority. But another part, long buried beneath years of building walls around his heart, stirred with something unfamiliar. He turned away from them, walking to the window. "Lucia, you may keep your position, but there will be no more mistakes." "You, sir," Lucia whispered, wiping her tears. Vincent's gaze shifted to Rosa's reflection in the glass. "As for you, Rosa Martinez, you have crossed a line that no one else has dared to cross. Do not know yet whether you are brave or simply foolish. But I promise you this: I will be watching you very carefully." Rosa felt the weight of his words, but did not regret her actions. She had said no to a millionaire, and somehow she was still standing. The mansion felt different after that night. Rosa noticed it in the way the other staff members looked at her, with a mixture of awe and concern. Some admired her courage, while others whispered that she had signed her own dismissal letter. Lucia hugged her tightly the morning after, tears streaming down her weathered face as she thanked Rosa for saving her job and dignity. Vincent Ashford had become a shadow that followed Rosa everywhere. Not physically, but she felt his presence constantly. When she cleaned the library, she would turn to find him standing in the doorway, watching her with an expression she could not decipher. When she arranged flowers in the morning room, he would pass by 3 times, each time slowing his pace as if wanting to say something, but changing his mind. Margaret noticed the shift in her son's behavior with great interest. She had raised Vincent alone after his father died when the boy was only 12. She had watched him transform from a sensitive child into a man who built walls so high that even she struggled to reach him. Yet this young maid with kind eyes and a steel spine had somehow managed to crack those walls in a single evening. The test of character, too. Weeks after the incident, Vincent called Rosa to his private office. The room was elegant and intimidating. It's filled with expensive artwork and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the estate gardens. Rosa entered with her head high, prepared for whatever confrontation awaited her. Vincent sat behind his massive desk, studying a document. He did not look up when she entered, making her wait in silence for several minutes. It was a power play, Rosa recognized, designed to make her uncomfortable and remind her of her place. She remained standing, patient and calm, refusing to show nervousness. Finally, Vincent set down his papers and looked at her directly. His gray eyes searched her face as if trying to solve a complex puzzle. "I have been researching you, Rosa Martinez. Did you know that?" Rosa felt a chill run down her spine, but kept her expression neutral. "I assumed you would, sir. You come from San Miguel Village, 2 hours from here. Your father died 3 years ago in a farming accident. Your mother suffers from a chronic illness that requires expensive medication. You send most of your earnings home to support her and your 2 younger brothers. You dropped out of university to work and provide for your family." Vincent recited these facts without emotion, but his eyes never left her face. "That information is correct," Rosa confirmed. Wondering where this conversation was leading, Vincent stood and walked around his desk, leaning against it with his arms crossed. The posture was casual, but Rosa sensed the calculation behind every movement. "You could have stayed silent that night. It's protected your own position. Yet you risked everything for someone you barely knew. Why?" Rosa met his gaze steadily. "'Cause it was the right thing to do. Lucia is a good person who made an honest mistake. She did not deserve to lose everything because of one imperfect decision." "The right thing," Vincent repeated, as if testing the words in his mouth. "Do you believe that doing the right thing always leads to good outcomes?" "No," Rosa answered honestly. "Sometimes doing the right thing costs us dearly, but living with ourselves afterward becomes easier." Something flickered across Vincent's face, perhaps a recognition. He walked to the window, his back to her. "I built this empire by making hard decisions, by demanding excellence and accepting nothing less. Kindness is often mistaken for weakness in business. I cannot afford to be weak." "Kindness and weakness are not the same thing, Mr. Ashford," Rosa said quietly. "Some of the strongest people I have known were also the kindest. Strength is not about making others fear you. It is about having the courage to be fair even when no one is watching." Vincent turned sharply, and for the first time, Rosa saw something vulnerable in his expression. It vanished quickly, replaced by his usual mask of control, but she had glimpsed it. Beneath the cold exterior lived a man who carried deep wounds. The dinner invitation that evening, Margaret invited Rosa to join her for tea in the sunroom. Elderly woman poured the tea herself, a gesture that surprised Rosa, as usually servants performed such tasks. Margaret's hands were steady despite her age, and her eyes held a warmth that reminded Rosa of her own grandmother. "You have done something remarkable, my dear," Margaret said, handing Rosa a delicate china cup. "You have made my son feel again." Rosa accepted the tea, confused by the statement. "I am not sure I understand, Mrs. Ashford." Margaret settled into her chair with a soft sigh. Vincent was not always so cold. As a boy, he was sensitive and caring. Cried when we had to put down our old dog. He spent his allowance buying food for homeless people he met in the city. He believed in goodness and fairness. "What changed him?" Rosa asked gently. The older woman's eyes grew distant with painful memories. When Vincent was 22, he fell deeply in love with a woman named Catherine. She was beautiful, charming, and came from a respected family. Vincent trusted her completely. He shared his dreams, his fears, his business plans. He was planning to propose when he discovered the truth. Rosa leaned forward, drawn into the story. Catherine was never interested in Vincent himself. She had been planted by a rival businessman to steal Vincent's ideas and sabotage his first major deal. When Vincent confronted her, she laughed at him, told him that his feelings were pathetic, that he was too soft to ever succeed in business. The betrayal nearly destroyed him. Margaret's voice grew thick with emotion. My son rebuilt himself after that, but he built walls instead of bridges. He decided that trust was foolish, that emotions were dangerous, that control was the only thing that mattered. He became successful, but lost the part of himself that knew how to connect with others. Rosa felt her heart ache for the young man, who had been so deeply hurt. It explained so much about Vincent's behavior, his need for absolute control, his inability to show vulnerability. "Why are you telling me this?" Rosa asked. Margaret smiled sadly. "Because you are the first person in 16 years who has refused to submit to his authority. You challenged him, and instead of simply firing you, he is questioning himself. That curiosity, that self-reflection, I have not seen it in him since Catherine destroyed his trust. You have reminded him that he is still human beneath the armor. He wears the unexpected Alitha following week brought unexpected complications." Trevor Walsh visited the mansion more frequently, always with business proposals that required Vincent's immediate attention. Rosa noticed that Trevor treated the staff with open disdain, snapping orders and making cruel comments about their appearance or intelligence. One afternoon, Rosa was cleaning the hallway outside Vincent's office when she overheard a heated conversation. Trevor's voice carried through the partially open door, loud and aggressive. "You are becoming soft, Vincent. Your staff is talking about how that little maid stood up to you and you did nothing. They think you are losing your edge in business. That kind of reputation can be fatal." "My household affairs are none of your concern," Vincent replied coolly. "Everything about you is my concern. We are partners, remember? Your reputation affects mine. Fire that maid. Make an example of her. Show everyone that you are still the man they fear." Rosa's hand tightened on her cleaning cloth. She should walk away, pretend she heard nothing, but her feet remained rooted to the spot. "Rosa stays," Vincent said firmly, and Rosa's heart skipped a beat at the sound of her name spoken in his deep voice. "You're making a mistake, Trevor. Warned, mark my words, Vincent. Showing weakness now will cost you everything." When Trevor stormed out of the office moments later, he nearly collided with Rosa in the hallway. His eyes narrowed when he saw her, and a cruel smile twisted his lips. "Enjoying your temporary victory, little maid? Do not get too comfortable. Vincent always comes to his senses eventually." Rosa held his gaze without flinching. "I am not interested in victories, Mr. Walsh. I am interested in doing my job with dignity." Trevor leaned closer, his breath smelling of expensive whiskey. "Dignity does not pay the bills, sweetheart. You would do well to remember your place before someone reminds you forcefully." "Is there a problem here?" Vincent's voice cut through. The tension, like a blade, stood in his office doorway, his expression dark and dangerous. Trevor straightened immediately, his threatening demeanor vanishing. "No problem at all. Just having a friendly chat with your staff." He walked away quickly, leaving Rosa and Vincent alone in the hallway. Vincent studied Rosa with an intensity that made her skin warm. "Did he threaten you?" "Nothing I cannot handle, sir," Rosa replied, though her hands trembled slightly. Vincent stepped closer, and Rosa caught the scent of his cologne, mixed with something warmer, more human. "Rosa, I want you to tell me immediately if Trevor or anyone else makes you uncomfortable. Do you understand?" The concern in his voice surprised her. This was not the cold employer giving orders. This was something different, something more personal. "Yes, Mr. Ashford, thank you." The moment of truth late that night. Rosa was finishing her final tasks in the kitchen when she heard piano music drifting through the mansion. The melody was hauntingly beautiful and deeply melancholic. She followed the sound to the music room, a space that was usually kept locked, through the partially open door. She saw Vincent sitting at a grand piano, his fingers moving across the keys with surprising grace. His eyes were closed, and his face held an expression of such raw emotion that Rosa felt like an intruder witnessing something sacred. This was not the controlled businessman. This was the sensitive boy Margaret had described, the one who had been buried beneath years of protective armor. Rosa must have made a sound because Vincent stopped playing abruptly and turned. For a moment their eyes met and neither spoke. The vulnerability on his face was so complete that Rosa's breath caught in her throat I did not mean to intrude, Rosa whispered. The music was beautiful. I did not know you played. Vincent stood slowly, and Rosa expected him to order her out, to retreat behind his usual coldness. Instead, he walked toward her with an expression she had never seen before, lost, confused, searching for something he could not name. My mother taught me when I was young, he said quietly. I stopped playing after Catherine. Music requires feeling, and I decided feelings were dangerous. Rosa took a small step into the room. But you are playing now. Yes. Vincent looked at his hands as if they belonged to someone else. I am playing now. How would I say what? Do what? Is happening to me, Rosa. Since that night you defied me, nothing has been the same. I feel things I thought I had killed years ago. It terrifies me. The honesty in his confession moved Rosa deeply. She saw before her not a powerful millionaire, but a wounded man struggling to remember how to be human. Feeling is not weakness, Mr. Ashford. It is what makes life worth living. Vincent laughed bitterly. Easy words when you have not been destroyed by trusting the wrong person. I have been hurt too, Rosa said softly. Different circumstances, but pain is pain. I could have let it make me bitter and closed. Instead, I chose to remain open, even if it means risking hurt again. 'Cause a life without trust, without connection, is not really living at all. Vincent stared at her as if seeing her truly for the first time. The walls he had built so carefully were crumbling, and he did not know whether to fight the collapse or surrender to it. You should go, he finally said, his voice rough with emotion. Before I say something we will both regret, Rosa nodded, and turned to leave, but paused at the door. Mr. Ashford, that music you were playing was not the sound of a man who cannot feel. It was the sound of a man who feels too much and has forgotten how to express it safely. She left him standing alone in the music room. Neither of them slept well that night. 3 weeks had passed since the night in the music room. The tension in Ashford Manor had become unbearable. Vincent found himself watching for Rosa, constantly, creating excuses to walk through rooms where she worked, asking her opinions on matters that had nothing to do with her duties. The staff noticed, Margaret noticed, and most dangerously, Trevor Walsh noticed. Rosa felt the shift too. Every accidental meeting with Vincent left her heart racing. When their hands brushed as she served him coffee, electricity seemed to spark between them. When he looked at her during dinner service, she felt exposed, as if he could see every secret thought she tried to hide. She knew she was falling for him, and the knowledge terrified her. A maid and a millionaire belonged in fairy tales, not real life. Margaret watched the dance between them with hope and concern. She saw how her son smiled slightly when Rosa entered a room, how he had started asking the staff about their families and well-being. The cold tyrant was melting, but she, worried about what would happen when he finally admitted his feelings. Society did not look kindly on such relationships. And Trevor would use any weakness against Vincent. One morning, Vincent called an emergency meeting with his household staff. Everyone gathered in the main hall, nervous and uncertain. Vincent stood at the top of the stairs, and for once, his expression was not cold or controlled. He looked uncomfortable, almost vulnerable. I owe you all an apology, Vincent began, and shocked gasps rippled through the assembled staff. I have ruled this household with fear instead of respect. I have demanded obedience without earning trust. That changes today. From now on, this will be a home, not a prison. You have my word. Lucia started crying. Other staff members exchanged disbelieving glances. Rosa stood at the back of the group, her heart swelling with pride and something deeper she dared not name. Trevor's betrayal that afternoon. Trevor arrived at the mansion with documents that made Vincent's face go pale. Rosa was serving tea in the study when she overheard their conversation, and what she heard made her blood run cold. Your investors are pulling out, Vincent. All of them, simultaneously. Trevor's voice carried false sympathy. Someone has been spreading rumors about your instability. They say you have become soft, distracted. They question your judgment. Vincent stood and walked to the window, his jaw tight with anger. Who would dare spread such lies? Does it matter? The damage is done. Your empire is crumbling unless... Trevor paused dramatically. Unless what? Unless you give me controlling interest in the company. I can use my connections to salvage the situation. But you will have to step down from leadership, become a silent partner. It is the only way to save what your father built. Rosa's hand shook as she poured the tea. She recognized manipulation when she heard it. Trevor was orchestrating Vincent's downfall, but she had no proof, only instinct. I need time to think, Vincent said, his voice hollow with shock. You have 24 hours. After that, the vultures will tear apart everything you have worked for. Trevor stood to leave, and his eyes found Rosa standing frozen by the tea. Service. A cruel smile crossed his face. Oh, and Vincent. Fire that made. She is part of the problem. Everyone knows you have been distracted by her. Show your investors you are still the man they trusted their money with. After Trevor left, silence filled the study. Rosa carefully set down the teapot, preparing to excuse herself, but Vincent's voice stopped her. Rosa, wait. She turned to face him, seeing the turmoil in his eyes. He looked like a man drowning, reaching for something to anchor him. Is it true? He asked quietly. Have I been distracted by you? Rosa's heart pounded so hard she thought it might break through her chest. I cannot answer that, sir. Only you know what occupies your thoughts, Vincent. Crossed the room until he stood directly in front of her. They had never been this close before, and Rosa could see flecks of blue in his gray eyes, could feel the heat radiating from his body. You occupy my thoughts constantly, he admitted, his voice raw and honest. From the moment I wake until I finally fall asleep, I think about you, your courage, your kindness, the way you see through every wall I have built. I do not know when it happened, but somewhere between your defiance and your compassion, I fell in love with you. Rosa's breath caught in her throat. Tears stung her eyes as joy and fear warred within her. Mr. Ashford, you cannot say such things. I am a maid. You are a millionaire. The world does not allow people like us to love each other. I do not care what the world allows, Vincent said fiercely. He reached up and gently cupped her face with his hands, a touch so tender it made Rosa's knees weak. I have spent 16 years caring what others think, building walls to protect myself from pain. But you were right, life without feeling, without trust, without love is not really living. I am tired of merely existing, Rosa. I want to live. Vincent Rosa whispered his name for the first time, and hearing it from her lips seemed to undo something in him. He leaned forward, his forehead resting against hers, and they stood like that for a long moment, breathing together, hearts beating in rhythm. The impossible choice Margaret found them like that, standing together in the study, and her eyes filled with tears of happiness. But her expression quickly turned serious when Vincent explained Trevor's ultimatum. He is behind this, Margaret said with certainty. Trevor has always been jealous of you. He wants your company, your reputation, everything you have built. I have no proof, Vincent said wearily. And even if I did, my investors are real people making real decisions. If they have lost faith in me, perhaps they are right to do so. Rosa listened to them talk, her mind racing. She thought about Trevor's frequent visits, his access to Vincent's office, his knowledge of private business matters. An idea began forming, dangerous and risky, but possibly their only chance. What if we could prove Trevor is behind this? Rosa asked suddenly. Both Vincent and Margaret turned to look at her. How? Vincent asked. Trevor underestimates me because I am a maid, sees me as invisible, someone not worth noticing or guarding his words around. Give me 3 days. Me get close to him, make him comfortable. Men like Trevor love to boast about their cleverness when they think no one important is listening. Absolutely not, Vincent said immediately, his voice hard. I will not put you in danger. Trevor is ruthless. He suspects you are investigating him. There is no telling what he might do. Rosa stepped forward, taking Vincent's hands in hers. This is not just about saving your company. This is about stopping a man who manipulates and destroys people for profit. How many others will he hurt if we do not expose him? I want to help you, Vincent. Let me help you. Vincent looked torn, his protective instincts warring with the knowledge that Rosa might be right. Finally, he nodded reluctantly. 3 days. But you report to me every evening. At the first sign of danger, you stop immediately. Promise. Me, I promise, Rosa said, squeezing his hands. The trap Rosa began her plan the next morning. She made sure to be present whenever Trevor visited, serving refreshments and appearing meek and subservient. She asked him innocent questions about business, pretending to be an ignorant maid fascinated by the wealthy world she cleaned. Trevor, flattered by the attention and convinced of her stupidity, began talking more freely. On the second day, Rosa carefully mentioned that Vincent seemed very stressed. Trevor's eyes lit up with interest. The poor man is about to lose everything, Trevor said with false sympathy. Such a shame. Used to be so sharp, so focused. But lately, he has been distracted by inappropriate feelings. His gaze slid over Rosa in a way that made her skin crawl. Must be hard being his partner and watching him struggle, Rosa said carefully. You must worry about your own investments. Trevor laughed. I am not worried at all, my dear. In fact, I will come out of this situation very well. Sometimes the best way to acquire something valuable is to make its current owner desperate enough to surrender it. Rosa's heart raced, but she kept her expression innocent. I do not understand business. Talk very well. Of course you do not, Trevor said condescendingly. He leaned closer, his breath sour with alcohol. But between you and me, I have been planning Vincent's downfall for months. Those investors did not suddenly lose faith. I planted doubts in their minds, one careful conversation at a time. I leaked information about Vincent's personal life, made him look unstable and emotional. By tomorrow, he will have no choice but to give me everything. Rosa felt sick, but forced herself to smile. That is very clever, Mr. Walsh. It is survival. Sweetheart, Vincent was always too soft, too ethical. He could never do what is necessary to truly win. Trevor stood and patted her shoulder patronizingly. You should start looking for a new position. Once I take over, I will fire everyone Vincent hired. Fresh start and all that. After Trevor left, Rosa ran to find Vincent. He was in his office, with Margaret and a man Rosa did not recognize. Vincent introduced him as Owen Fletcher, his lawyer. Did you get what we needed? Vincent asked urgently. Rosa pulled a small recording device from her apron pocket, the one Vincent had given her 2 days ago. Every word. He confessed to manipulating your investors, to orchestrating your downfall, everything. Oh. Owen smiled grimly. This is enough. We can present this to the investors and expose Trevor's fraud. He will face criminal charges. Vincent pulled Rosa into a fierce embrace, not caring that his mother and lawyer were watching. You were incredible and terrifying. Promise me you will never put yourself at risk like that again. Rosa laughed against his chest, feeling safe for the first time in days. I cannot promise that. Someone has to keep you out of trouble. The confrontation the next morning, Vincent called an emergency meeting with his investors at the mansion. Trevor arrived confidently, expecting Vincent to sign over control of the company. Instead, he found himself facing a room full of angry business partners who had just heard the recording of his confession. You manipulative snake, one investor shouted. We trusted you. Trevor's face went white, then red with rage. His eyes found Rosa standing near the wall, and understanding dawned. You, he snarled, lunging toward her. Vincent moved faster, intercepting Trevor and throwing him against the wall. You will not touch her. You will not speak to her. You will never come near her again. The police arrived moments later. As officers led Trevor away in handcuffs, he screamed threats and curses. Vincent held Rosa close, shielding her from the ugliness. After everyone else had left, Vincent, Rosa, and Margaret stood together in the now quiet study. The crisis was over. The company was saved. But a bigger question remained unanswered. The final barrier. I love you, Rosa Martinez, Vincent said, taking her hands. I love your courage, your honesty, your compassion. I love the way you make me want to be a better man. I know the world will judge us. I know people will say terrible things, but I do not care anymore. I want you in my life, not as my maid, but as my partner, my equal, my love. Rosa felt tears stream down her face. Vincent, I love you too. But I am afraid. Your world is so different from mine. I do not know how to be part of it. Margaret stepped forward and took both their hands. My dear Rosa, you do not need to become part of his world. You need to build a new world together, one where love matters more than social status, where kindness is valued above wealth. Is the world worth living in? Vincent dropped to one knee, and Rosa gasped. From his pocket, he pulled out a simple gold ring. This was my grandmother's wedding ring. She was a seamstress who married a farmer. They had nothing but love, and, according to my mother, they were the happiest couple she ever knew. Rosa, will you marry me? Will you help me remember that the best things in life cannot be bought, only earned through honesty and courage? Rosa looked at the man kneeling before her, the powerful millionaire who had learned humility, the wounded soul who had learned to trust again. She thought about her mother, who had always taught her that true worth came from character, not bank accounts. She thought about her own courage in saying no to injustice, and how that one moment had changed both their lives. Yes, Rosa whispered. Then louder, yes, I will marry you. Vincent stood and swept her into his arms, kissing her as if she were the most precious thing in the world, because to him, she was. 6 months later, the wedding was held in the gardens of Ashford Manor on a perfect spring morning. Instead of a lavish society affair, Vincent and Rosa invited the people who truly mattered. The household staff sat in the front rows, crying happy tears. Rosa's mother, healthy again thanks to the medical care Vincent had insisted on providing, beamed with pride. Margaret served as matron of honor, her eyes shining with joy for her son. Lucia caught the bouquet, and everyone cheered. The celebration was simple but filled with genuine warmth and laughter. As Vincent and Rosa danced their first dance as husband and wife, he whispered in her ear, "Thank you for teaching me that true power comes from love, not fear. Thank you for being brave enough to say no when everyone else said yes. Thank you for saving me from myself." Rosa smiled up at him, her heart overflowing. "Thank you for being brave enough to change. Thank you for choosing love over pride. Well, and thank you for proving that fairy tales can come true, even for maids who dare to defy millionaires." They kissed as the sun set behind them. Two people from different worlds who had built a bridge of trust and courage between them. In a mansion that once echoed with fear and obedience, love had finally found a home, and everyone who witnessed it knew they had seen something rare and beautiful. The transformation of two souls who learned that the greatest wealth is found, not in what you own, but in who you love and how you treat those who cannot repay you. The maid who said no had won not just the millionaire's heart, it helped him rediscover his own humanity. And in doing so, she proved that real strength lies not in demanding obedience but in inspiring others to be their best selves. The end.